All right, what's up, everybody? I am here with Eric Simons, co-founder of
Yep.
Bolt.new or main founder. We're going to get into that actually for Bolt.new. But this has been a long while coming. We've been meaning to catch each other so we can chat more about the rapid pace of Bolt.new. But I've seen Eric on Twitter, on YouTube videos, and it seems like he's just a wealth of knowledge. So, Eric, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I mentioned it, before we start, but I appreciate you being willing to work around the nuts schedule the past couple of weeks, and I'm stoked to be here. It's been a blast. I mean, it's been a blast getting into chat with you via text, and
Yeah,
DMs and stuff and whatever have you. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm stoked to chat and meet you, with a moving face for the first time here.
Likewise. All right. So to start us off, let's start with the past, right? What's your background? Where were you born? How did you essentially end up to where you are today? Like what's the origin story there?
Good question. Yeah, so I was born in Arizona, but I grew up in a suburb of Chicago called Naperville. And so the co-founder of StackBlitz, Albert Pye, he and I actually are like childhood best friends, and he and I grew up down the street from each other growing up. And so that's how he and I met. I think he and I were
Yeah.
like playing football in middle school or something, and then we bonded over computers. And so like when we were 13, we learned how to build websites together and learn how to program and like we just because we had ideas for different products and businesses that we thought would be cool. And this is back in like the mid like 2005, I guess, 4 or 5, something like that, through something in that range. And I mean, back then, these days, there's just, I mean, if you want to learn how to build a website or code or anything, all this stuff is online for free. But
Seriously.
back then, it wasn't, man. It was like, you had to go, if you went to the library, they had these like books on like jobs. It's this stuff that just, it was like from like 10 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And, the O'Reilly books were really the main thing. And those were like $200 a pop. And
Yeah.
so for our
Wait, were you
13th
born in the
birthdays,
90s or 80s?
I was born I was born in
91.
95.
Okay. 86
Okay.
for me. So yeah,
Okay.
not
All
too
right.
far. Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah.
too far. Oh yeah, so
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. I mean, because that was that era, man. It was
Yep.
like we had like instead of getting Xboxes for our 13th birthdays, we were like, hey, can we have this book on like PHP and MySQL? Because like $200 for these things, like a lot of
Yes.
money. Um,
Yeah.
and so learned how to program, and he and I've been building stuff ever since. And
Hmm.
I mean, we've done it, just probably dozens of different like projects over the years. And a couple of them were startups. One of them, the one before StackBlitz, we actually it was basically a lifestyle business we started. We bootstrapped it from scratch and then through acquisition. But yeah, Albert and I are just building web apps for a couple of decades, I guess now. And yeah, it's just we're engineers at heart, and we love the web, and we building products and businesses. And so StackBlitz is kind of cool because it's like the tool to and Bolt is
Yeah.
the product everyone knows us for at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the thing we wish we had when we were 13, and for everything else that we built between now and then. But yeah, that's kind of we got to dig into different parts of that. But yeah, that's kind of 0 to 60 on who I am or how we got here.
My gosh. You're very fortunate to have found a friend that you've been able to like kind of go through all of this with from a very young age because a lot of folks, especially in business, right, is like don't mix business and family or friends. So yeah, how is that? How have you responded to that, when people kind of highlight that?
No, it's a good point, right? And I think it's interesting because, like, you know, I think Albert and I have always bonded over this, right? So it's kind of like, I guess maybe a different way of framing is like he and I have been co-founders since we were 13, in a
Exactly.
sense. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, and you're 100% right. I only really appreciated like actually what you just pointed out of like how fortunate I am to have met someone
Yeah.
so early in my life that
Deep trust.
bi-directional trust and compassion and support. Because I mean, like it's really hard to find people where you can have that yin and yang that really works,
Yes. Yeah.
of like an inseparable bond sort of thing.
Your soulmate,
And
your technical soulmate.
absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
and in life, and he love hanging out.
Yeah.
And we he and I are like, I think get a kick out of each other, and just like, and we have a whole group of friends and stuff that we've kind of accrued as we move out to the valley and whatever. And
Yeah.
anyways, but yeah, I love that guy, and I think he loves me too. I hope, but
We hope, huh?
no, he's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's anyways, yeah, you kind of just had the good fortune of meeting
Mm.
someone that has been where we've been co-founders effectively for 20 years on stuff. Because I don't think I would have ever, even just learning to code.
Mm,
Doing that solo is really hard, especially when no internet, there's nothing on the internet that you could really, Stack Overflow, I don't think was existed at that point.
mm,
So it's like, if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would have ever really broken through that big barrier to entry of getting your dev environment set up and just like learning, this, that, right? So,
yeah.
anyways, yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, super cool.
That is it is an amazing story, and I think it's also something that, yeah, again, it's very hard to replicate or find, right, as easily. And I think a lot of people discount the importance of trust in those type of relationships because you hear so many
Yeah,
horror stories, especially in startups, right,
yeah,
where they have fallouts with the co-founders and greed takes over. But I think I'm in the same basket as you, though. I've found that I've actually worked quite well with some of my own family members. My youngest sis, when this was probably around 2013, I remember getting her a job at the same place I was at, and we were just like a power duo, right? And
yep,
if we got back to work together again, I'd gladly do it, because
yep, yeah,
when you know each other for that long, and especially from young, you just things flow, yeah, you don't have to worry as much. But okay, cool. So you've already worked on a lot of different projects together, right? Which is obviously led its way to Bolt. But I didn't know that StackBlitz, well, essentially, StackBlitz is an IDE. Is that,
yeah.
yeah, but it's also the name of the agency. Is like, was StackBlitz an agency first, or was the IDE product first?
So where did you find the agency thing, actually?
Somewhere online. So yeah, yeah, somewhere online. Yeah, and that's why I was confused. I was like, were you an agency first, or was it the tool first? And then well, what happened there?
You were the first person to ever, I don't know where you found that data
Yeah,
point, but
I
like,
don't
so
know.
you're the first person that's ever brought it up.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't think I don't really ever like mention, because it basically, like, Albert and I, we were back in 2012, 2013. We started just, building lots of different ideas, and we would do like contracting gigs on the side to stay afloat, because we were in our, early 20s, and just, we were living in a hacker house in Palo Alto. We just wanted to build stuff. We were trying to,
Mhm.
have fun and just cut our teeth on hard problems and stuff.
Yes.
And so, back then, we were, freelancing to kind of, pulling money so that we could go work on the things we wanted to work on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Our own ideas or whatever. And so we were, the name, like, it was like, oh, what are we were just building lots of web apps for customers, for our own stuff. And so that's like the name StackBlitz. I don't know, I can't remember how, I just kind of came up with the name. I was like, oh, we'll just kind of call us like
Mhm.
StackBlitz Labs or something.
Yeah.
I think the first time I'm ever talking about this, by the way, publicly,
Great.
because it's like, it's totally unrelated, actually, because
Yeah.
it was like for like maybe 2 years or something, we were kind of contracting like kind of underneath that sort of name, and never really, I mean, we never had a website or anything. We were just kind of using it, and because we most of our ideas didn't work, so we were like, instead of just like renaming a company, it's like same company, just okay, new. And
Relays.
yeah, I mean, that's how it goes. I mean, that's like a
Yeah.
lot of entrepreneurship is just, I mean, and you learn every time. You learn, recalibrate, and you get better at it, right? And we spent a lot more years than I thought it would take to do it, but I'm glad we did it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so then back in 2017, when we kind of had the idea for what became StackBlitz, the product and the company, we hadn't even been using the StackBlitz name for 3 or 4 years of that for anything, and we never really meaningfully used it anyways.
Yeah.
But we were like, what do we name this thing? It's like this in-browser IDE that's like fast and da da. And we were like, should we call it like play code, or we had all these names. And I was like kind of searching for domains, and in the tool, whatever thing we use for our domains, I was like, oh, we own stackblitz.com. And I was like, StackBlitz, that,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like
Yeah.
exactly what this is, right? And so anyway, so then that was actually how StackBlitz came to be. So
Interesting.
that was the real StackBlitz. Like it was just before, it was just kind of a name we used to kind of as a holding company, basically, of striking out on ideas. And then when the time came to get a name for the actual product slash company,
Mm.
perfect, and went and ran with that. But yeah, anyway, so that's kind of the origins of the name, and yeah, I can talk to you about the product and the actual
Yes.
stack.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically the core, like what convinced Albert and I to like, it wasn't a company for like 2 years after we started in 2017 or launched it.
Yep.
But we got, like, the reason we built it though is like, when we first came to Silicon Valley in 2012, 2013, we had the good fortune of bumping into Dylan Field, who's the co-founder and CEO of Figma. But
Mm.
that he was starting Figma then with his co-founder Evan Walls. Like, they were at the beginning phases,
Yeah.
and with their first pitch, was not a design tool. It was actually just a demo of a 3D ball dropping into water and inside of a browser tab using like WebGL. And
Yeah.
the pitch was basically browsers have gotten to this point where they're powerful enough to actually do complex graphics rendering.
Yeah.
And if we go and make an engine for a design tool like that, we can bring design to the web. It'll take a couple of years to build that engine, but if you can do it, it'll change everything.
Mm,
So that was their pitch, right?
crazy.
And so in 2017, we saw that same deep technology browser play kind of happening for web development. We're like, like it's even today, like browsers don't have a built-in way of building apps for the
Yeah.
web,
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so weird.
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
Mm,
And but we, in 2017, a handful of APIs landed in browsers. We were like, okay, actually, it's now like theoretically possible to write an operating system from scratch in WebAssembly that could like run an entire dev environment in your browser tab, and so people could come to the web and build web apps without just installing anything locally. And it's like that'd be incredible. Like, that's like the tool we
mm,
wish we had when we were 13,
mm.
and for everything else since then. So, anyways, that was kind of the origins of StackBlitz, and that's kind of been our product has been a web-based IDE for the past 7 years up until we
Interesting.
launched Bolt 2 months ago. And so that's kind of this, adding AI on top of that technology has been a game changer. It's just,
Yeah.
Bolt lets you put in words and get production web applications out.
Hmm.
So, so that's kind of the whole zero
No,
to six.
that's fascinating. And I want to definitely get to how Bolt got bolted on, right? But more interesting, I remember, was it Sam? You have another member of the team called Sam?
Dude, we got two Sams.
You got two Sams. Okay, let me see. Which Sam was I talking to? Sam.
Sam
So
Denty, yeah.
yeah. So I think when I was chatting to him, he was also highlighting some of the like really innovative stuff you guys built through
Yeah.
StackBlitz, right? So yeah, would you mind talking a little bit about that? Because I don't think people realize just how
Yeah.
innovative your product is, right? Because you've made it so seamless, and that's kind of like the genius of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
maybe let's go through that.
Yeah, totally. And I imagine what he was talking about was web containers, right?
Yeah.
So that was like again, StackBlitz was like a deep technology play. And
Mm,
so the key thing that we developed in the first couple of years of the company's life, what we were building was we wrote an operating system from scratch, and we call this thing web container. And it
mm,
lets you run an operating system in a browser tab, that's like boots in 100 milliseconds, et cetera.
yep.
And no one's done this before. I mean,
Mm,
and there still is nothing like this out today.
crazy.
And what it enables, right, is this: when you go to Bolt or you go to the StackBlitz IDE, you don't have to put in a credit card to try it because it doesn't cost us. We don't have to spin up some VM in the cloud for you to use. It's
Mm,
using your CPU and memory, and that also means the experience is fast. There's no latency, right? If you try
mm,
these other cloud IDE things, you'll like type in the terminal or something or just in the editor, and there's actually a delay to just seeing your keystroke register because it has to go to the server, come
mm,
back, da, da, da. And so it's like, and often you have to put in your credit card to even use these things,
yep.
right?
Yep.
And so this is it, and when you look at all the productivity apps that have ever come to the web, this is the compute model they've had: Figma, Google Docs, etc. They don't spin up a VM for every user that's coming to them because for in the case of Google Docs, there'd be like a billion VMs. There's not even a billion VMs on the planet, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so they use your computer CPU memory through the browser to do the compute work.
Mm,
And that's what our technology, web containers, it allows you to do that for full web development tool chains, which is what Bolt is actually powered by. Like we couldn't have done Bolt without the 7 years of work to build that technology.
interesting. And for StackBlitz, what kept you guys going? Like, who were your earliest customers, right? Was that,
Yeah,
did you get investment for that in order to keep going, or did you have paying customers for that? Like, yeah, what was I guess, the business that allowed you to get to the point where Bolt was able to be added on?
totally. So, really good question, right? So, like for these deep technology, bets, when like from an investor point of view,
Yeah.
you know, the the risk in these things tends to be front loaded to, can we build this technology? Is
Yeah.
it possible, right? Because if no one's done it before, like that's a huge risk. But
Hmm.
if it is possible to do, and there's an obvious commercial application of it, then the market risk tends to be far lower than a typical business play that you go and do, right? And the challenge that we built the technology, and the initial audience was developers, people that write software for a living already. And it got pretty popular in developer circles. We have, today we have a couple million developers a month that use StackBlitz.com. And the big challenge though was when it came to the monetization, developers, local environments are great, and getting them out of local environments is really hard for like
Yeah.
use cases that were valuable.
Yeah.
And so that was the challenge. And so we had investors that really believed in the technology and kind of like what it could mean to democratize building incredible web apps on the web.
Yeah.
And what we were just in search of the killer interface and use case to the technology.
Mm.
And so back, earlier this year, with the advent of the AI stuff going on, we had a business that Stab was selling to enterprises and that sort of thing, but it
Mm.
wasn't a venture scale business, right? It wasn't, invest the whole idea when you take capital as a venture-backed company is that you're going to grow to even doing like 5 million, getting to a max of $10 million a year is like failure, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so back, and we weren't even close to that. And so
Mm.
back at the beginning of the year, kind of with the advent of the, LLMs and whatever, I had the idea for Bolt. And I was like, this could be very interesting, right? To think like Claude or ChatGPT plus our web container technology, that strikes me as a very compelling match, right? Of those technologies to make an amazing experience. We had to go and run and do a 2-week sprint building a prototype on kind of the latest frontier models back in February, and they just weren't good enough. Like the code that was, it was just buggy. It looked terrible. And we're like, okay, well maybe these LLMs will improve. We'll come back to it.
Mm.
And then back in May, we got an early sneak peek of some of the new stuff that's come out. With Sonnet 3.5 and whatnot. And we're like, whoa, like this is a game changer. And we kind of pulled that project off the shelf and then built Bolt and then shipped it. I think a couple months after that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Crazy. And did you guys have any patents for any of the technologies that you guys built as well?
Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, specifically on web container, right? So like the thing with like in general, like patents just are. I mean, they're not a meaningful deterrence mechanism,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But when you actually do when you do a deep technology sort of play like this, where you're spending like 3 years plus, 4 years plus of R&D, and then et cetera. It's useful to have as a mechanism when you're dealing with bad actors effectively. And like we've had the displeasure of like folks, I mean startups that should have known better, I mean raised from good people that where they're copying and pasting code from our production assets, and so when these like, and that is an example, it's like we hit them up and said, hey, like you can't just copy and paste stuff from our our JavaScript bundles on our site, like that's like, but we don't want it to cause a whole ruckus here, but like and they refuse to do anything about it. And so it's like you have to, it's important to have multiple levers to be like, okay, well if the copyright claim doesn't matter to you, then here's another one, right? And so that's it's useful to have just for dealing with bad actors effectively, but and it's only if you're doing a deep technology thing. Most software patents are just not extremely defensible because it's like the Amazon one-click checkout thing. It's like
Yeah.
there's a patent on that, come on, But anyways, yeah, so that was cool. I didn't know anything about writing patents, but I wrote that thing, and
Interesting.
it was kind of an interesting experience,
Yeah. No, fascinating. No, it's the reason I asked, right, is because I also found myself going down, patent exploration too, about 6 months ago, and I kind of had the same view that I didn't think they were really worth much unless, it was something that I don't know, just something completely far out of my what I thought I could patent. And what was interesting is when I went to a patent attorney, they were like, "Hey, this is actually patentable, and you might, want to consider it." I was like, "Okay," but then I'm glad I kind of trusted my gut a bit, and I was waiting and watching to see what was going on in the AI space. And you're seeing now people just screenshotting stuff and replicating the code to build,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that in relation to patents and just the dynamics of what's actually defensible now?
Yeah, dude, it's a good question. I mean, because this is what like we've had folks kind of ask us about, hey, what like can't let Bolt let me put website URL in and tell Bolt to just copy it, and I'm like, I don't know, yeah, because there's something like, not that like I think it's totally fine to take inspiration from sites and whatever, but I think that it's kind of the early innings of this of what's going on here. So I kind of look at this stuff and it's like, so from the Stackbase perspective, like that feature ask, right? I'm like, there's risk here. I mean, there's the liability risk where we're, if we're encouraging people, hey, go and do this. Like if
Yeah.
we have the ability, you can screenshot anything and upload it to Bolt and say, make this, right? But
Yeah.
there's meaningful intent there. I mean, and it's just, to me, I'm concerned about it too, is, there's ecosystems right now, folks that build beautiful templates and stuff, for a
Yeah.
living. And, I
I didn't
think
think
that
about that.
I think there's a place for them in this new world, right? But I don't think the most helpful thing for people that in this, in our, our colleagues or competitors or whatever, it's like, I don't know, you know, I don't think people have to be out for blood. Like, I think
Yeah.
that there's a way to have a path for people to bring their creativity and ingenuity into an AI augmented sort of way. But it makes me uncomfortable, just like, man, I just and so I don't have like I guess a super direct
Yeah.
answer, but I think it definitely it weighs on me, and I don't
Yeah.
have I'm apprehensive to just kind of to build stuff that's going to accelerate other people's livelihoods,
Yeah.
being kind of decimated even faster than it already is, but without clear paths for them to go to, right? And that's kind of there's a bit of, it's business and, dog eat dog world, whatever, but there is a bit of a, I think that I think it's always better to just like try and figure out, how does everyone win, right?
Yeah.
How does everyone improve as a result of this? And anyway, so that's just kind of
Yeah.
my general thoughts on it,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why I appreciate, I often judge a lot of products, not just on the function, also the form. Like I love, things that look good, right? Because it's an experience. But I also tend to look at the philosophy of the founders and the teams, right, behind these products. And that does draw me in a lot. And I had this sense that you guys were very mindful and conscious of your decisions. And you've just confirmed, right? Like what I felt. And I got that from the product and the way that you guys were releasing things. And so it makes me think about, well, one, right? When back in the day, right, we had Napster, LimeWire, all of these sort of, torrent sites, pirated films and whatnot. Then Netflix came around, and I had no problems paying for the movies, right? Which made me realize that, hey, people will do the right thing if you provide a pathway, right?
Yeah,
That's quick, affordable, and works. And I remember Netflix in the early days, it did such a good job of like, it had almost everything, like in terms of films, like anything I
yeah,
could think of, I could find it. But then all of the bloody, regional locks and distribution rights
yeah,
and all that stuff came in. And now it's not as good as it used to be. Because
yeah,
you can still get a film off of other sites or platforms, right? And Netflix can do it too, but I guess some of these rules get in the way. And I wonder for when we're screenshotting stuff, it makes me wonder too, right? Like a lot of inventions often come from being inspired by nature, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we'll take photos of stuff all the time and that inspires, but it's not like those things we take photos of or even nature gets any royalties or has any patents over
Totally.
themselves, which inspires products.
Yeah, yeah,
And I guess, yeah. Okay, so where do you think this is going to lead, right? We're talking about behaviors, right? I was telling you how
yeah,
before we got on, yeah? How do you think this is shaping us, right? These are a perfect example of how AI is accelerating the speed of things. How do you think
yeah.
it's going to shape our behavior over the next, like, say, 5 years?
God, that's a good question. I mean, there's so much in what you just said, actually. It's kind of like made me, yeah, I mean, it's very, very interesting insights of like what you pointed out. I mean, just
Mhm.
so I'm going to answer your question, but like
Yeah, yeah,
what you
yeah.
pointed about, I was thinking about LimeWire and like you kind of like, and the switch to paid services like Spotify, Netflix. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like the more durable things are the ones that do it in a way that's sustainable for everyone, right? And
Yes.
I think it's a great example. It's like LimeWire, just no one uses that anymore, right?
Yeah,
And like,
exactly.
there's great alternatives. Also, the thing you said about nature, it makes you go, yeah, like it's super interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Where and also and that kind of ties into the question you're asking, right? Is like, yeah, how does this change the behaviors? And I think, but just in my position too is not that, hey, like using taking a screenshot of something, using it as a base point is bad or something. That's totally
Yep.
not. It's more, it's like, I think there's kind of there's this gray area though of
Yes,
like where it's like
100%.
things are just like and then other things like, yeah, totally fine, whatever, right?
Yep.
Um and I guess one thing for sure, we're going to see the gray area explored front to back. I think that there's going to, because this is unprecedented. This is a brand new world. I think I mean, great analogy to LimeWire and stuff. It's like, I think we're going to see a lot of stuff like that. And then there's going to be whether it's, just better products or better experiences, or there's landmark cases legally that come about this stuff where we've got to put a lid on it. I think that's what I think is going to happen, is it's just that we're going to fully explore what this new frontier is. And then along the way, we're going to find out, hey, what do as a society, what do we think is morally the right thing, and also from the letter of the law, uh, how does the letter of the law change to account for some of this stuff, right? And I think it just again, some of this stuff is like, man, it's just like open season on some of these things, and it strikes me that there's gonna have to be, you know, some amount of red tape or whatever over the next half decade that comes up around some of these things, right? Not, but but yeah, I think that's kind of what's in it. The way I think this is how it has always happened with every technology. There's a new frontier. We have to go and explore it, right? Because I think it's a mistake to go, let's nerf things up front that we're scared about. Because it's like so often, if you were to do that, the most incredible benefits to all humans in society would never be discovered because it's like oh, this is off limits. I think it's good to let things rip, but then kind of, you know, retroactively go, okay, this is what we're seeing, and this is we don't think this is good, and
Yeah.
kind of nerve that, right? But
Yeah.
anyways,
I mean, that's perfectly said. And your names are kind of fitting, right? You got Stack Blitz, you've got Bolt there. And so speed is definitely going to be, a part of, I guess, your culture. And it's needed, especially, I mean, with AI, I think one of the things that it's done for me is it made me question myself as a human being. Interestingly, right?
yeah,
Because you've seen me, right, talk about the probabilistic versus deterministic stuff, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
there was this great article that was talking about the different classes of reasoning models. I don't know if you've seen it or heard about it, but there's like four different classes that these researchers came up with. And they said the current state of like a lot of these LLMs are in a class two zone and like class two, class three. And they're trying to get to a class four reasoning state, which is supposed to be that like perfect balance of like, I guess, the deterministic and probabilistic aspect, right? Interestingly, there is a correlation with class four and indigenous knowledge systems. And the reason being, it's like it's all coming back to stuff that has been around for a long time that,
Huh.
the whole belief of like everything is connected, this probabilistic aspect of AI is questioning our human tendency towards determinism to be
Huh.
like, hey, if everything is connected, there's might just have to leave things be a little bit ambiguous and be comfortable with that, but also be able to use our human deterministic aspects to know when to switch stuff. And that's a cultural context, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when I was reading this and I was thinking about it, I was like, holy cow. you know, there's that meme with that chart, right? Where it's like you start somewhere, get to the middle, and end at the same spot. I feel like that's what's happening for us.
That's
Yeah.
incredible, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it does make you think like, who are we as humans, right? You know,
Yeah.
that's unbelievable.
Yeah. And what have you experienced personally, right? Because you've been doing a lot of these with your co-founder and since 13, what has been the biggest shifts maybe not just from a tech perspective, but behavioral for you? Like what have you seen shift yourself?
Yeah, yeah. Just like in society, you mean?
Yeah.
Or like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, gosh, I mean, back in the 2000s, I mean, that was a fun time on the internet because, people were forced to, using your computer, using a computing device was an intentional decision you had to make because you had to go, it was like desktop PCs, right? I mean,
Yeah,
like, you
yeah,
weren't
yeah.
dragging things around with you unless you were like doing it to a LAN party, which, yeah, which I was doing.
Oh,
But
don't get me started. StarCraft. Holy cow. Yeah.
oh yeah. Yeah. And so and Albert and I were doing, a lot of that back in the day. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was intentional. I think it was like there's this very healthy disconnection from the online world, right? But it's fun. I mean, this is like the world. This is the era of like GeoCities and like MySpace, and then the early Facebook and whatever. And I think mobile really, it just having you can have that's just attached to you effectively. I mean, it has completely transformed how our society works, how people get information and make decisions. And I think and then you layer what's going on with AI on top of that, and it's I mean, this is dang. I mean, I'm like, wow, gosh, things have changed a lot in 20 years. I mean, geez,
Yeah.
like this is it's incredible to think that that we're still running as a society. I mean, just it's a testament to, I think, the fact that the world, there's so many great people in the world because I think this is hard to contend with the level of change and rate of change, that's happened.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I think I think what's been lost in some, and it's easy to get lost in the digital world. I think we see a lot of that. And at various points, I've gotten lost in it too.
Mm.
But that's so I think that's the double-edged sword of this stuff. It's easy to get sucked in, and I think some of the incentives as a business for some of these things. Obviously, it's like you look at things like I mean, any content consumption, whether it's social media or whatever, some of their KPIs are how many hours are people spending on our app per day, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah, and incentives are an interesting one, right? Because we've seen how, through a lot of the social media applications, essentially what they went down, the path that they went down was like casino, behavior, right? Like, they're just looking at, how can they make people swipe more and all this
Yeah,
other stuff. Like there was a book called Hooked, I remember reading about, and just all those,
yeah,
hook mechanisms that they're using. And yeah, you go like, what have we unintentionally done to ourselves, right? In the
yeah.
pursuit of growth and more. I guess the question is, because I remember you got a family at the moment, like
I
child.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yep,
Um,
yeah. I got an 8-month-old here.
Oh, congrats.
Thanks.
Exciting. And so how has things changed, right, with a newborn, right? In terms of, how you treat technology and how do you balance things these days?
Yeah,
Balance.
yeah. Yeah. Good question. I mean, I think, yeah, I think for me, it's being intentional, with the time with the people you love, right? I mean, I think, especially especially the past couple of months with just Bolt kind of blowing up, it's like I'm just working around the clock, so it's kind of hard to like fully disconnect, But yeah, I think a lot of it, is just like putting the stuff down and like and spending time with the people around you. And then in the stuff that we do at Stackblitz, I think in the back of my mind, you've got a lot of parents at the company, and so I think that I think it matters to us all that we're building stuff that's helping build a future where that we want our kids to live in, and so just kind of that's intentional in a lot of the decisions that we make, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's a good segue into, company culture, team culture, right? Do you guys actively shape that? Is that something that has emerged? Where are you guys at with that?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think it's kind of actively emerged, and like when you start a company, it's like I think that some people will be like you need to like set core values up front. I think and it's like maybe not a bad idea to like think through what things we think are important now. But I think that the thing is, it's like when you're starting out a company, you want it to be you have people just be there because they're excited to work on stuff, and there's almost unspoken whatever the vibe is, right? It should just be exciting and people are emanating the values and morals that I think personally, right, that matter to them. And then kind of that's what happened with us. It's like, we just, for the first 4 or 5 years of the company, we didn't have like established core values or whatever. We had this group of folks that have been working together for a long time, maybe it was 3 or 4 years, something like that. But it's like, if you work with great people that you are or would love to be friends with outside of work, you just kind of yeah, think of it like that. It's like whoever you're thinking of, like friends that you have, and then if you what core values would you assign on that friendship now? But imagine trying to do that before you even knew them, right? Like
Yeah,
that's kind of
exactly.
like so that's something that's organically kind of popped up, and then as we're growing the company, then you start thinking, well, okay, if we're going to hire more people, how do we ensure we don't lose the things that are great that we really think have allowed us to have a great workplace environment where everyone like is having fun, is feeling fulfilled, is able to recharge, is all these things, and that's when it makes sense to codify when you're like we need to scale because there is no other way to scale human organizations other than codifying like the core values, right? Whether that is the Declaration of Independence or Bill of Rights or whatever, or the core values that you find on any corporate website of like we believe in like da da da. But that's how you do it. That's how you scale. And then the best ones are like where it's the most genuine and it's actually entrenched in every day and they're enforced where it's like this. We don't talk to each other like that. Like we don't, it's when these things pop up, and then if you have folks get in that just can't, they continue to exhibit behaviors that don't align, you have to weed that stuff out, because the problem is it gets in there for a while, it can ruin all of it, right? But yeah, so it's a very intentional thing with everyone we're hiring. It's like we want to work with great people that we are fun and fulfilling, and.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's interesting because there are sometimes these like subconscious decisions you make, right? Like even the names that you have chosen, I think are also reflective of your culture. And I think of like bolt of lightning or flash of inspiration, those sort of things, right? Because that's essentially what you guys are facilitating when it comes to helping other people with their ideas. When they get a flash of inspiration or insight, you can help them create their products or realize their ideas really quick. And it's interesting because I remember when I first learned about the Blitzkrieg, just that name, right? And how they got inspired. Was it the Germans for the Blitzkrieg?
Yeah,
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 right.
yeah,
And how they got inspired by the Mongols. And so I think whenever I see these sort of things, I'm always looking at like, okay, when we go back into history, right, are there these types of like civilizations or tribes and things that you can borrow to as part of your own scaling efforts from the cultural side? So it might be
yeah,
something to look at later, but I see a lot of similarities because interestingly, even though the Mongols were known for massacring a lot of people, they talk about how because of what they did, they cooled the entire planet by 3 degrees. I don't know if you remember seeing
yeah,
that, right?
yeah,
Insane. So,
yeah,
despite there being some destruction somewhere, right? Because we were alluding to this when you were talking about worrying about, you know, other people's jobs or livelihoods being decimated. But in the process, does it also make room for new things? And this is that
yeah,
whole creation destruction thing. And I kind of see that's what you guys are doing, but I'm so glad that you're conscious of it because while you're doing this, you can also have parts of your community maybe focus on that because I know AI ethics is also a big thing now, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and yeah, have you thought about okay, it might be a good segue into the community aspect, right?
yeah, yeah,
So yeah. So let's maybe talk about the community. Let's start with Bolt.DIY, which I saw
yeah,
today, right? That you guys were talking about, and then we'll talk more about the article that I wrote for you and your thoughts
yeah,
on
yeah.
the aspect. But yeah, let's start with that from what happened today, what you shared.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So when we put Bolt online, we originally actually open sourced the core components of it because like they're, like we StackBlitz, like we invest a lot in backing open source software and stuff. And there's like a project called Veeth we've been the biggest backer of for I don't know 3 or 4 years, and it's kind of taken over the entire web development world at this point. And so when we went to launch Bolt, we were just kind of when we were building the agent for the thing, we were looking around like, God, there's not a lot of good examples of how to do this sort of thing. They're like real production rates.
Yeah.
We're like, we should just open source like the core components and and then see what happens basically, right?
Yes.
And I'm really glad we did that because and yeah, Bolt.diy. So that what ended up happening is there's a guy named Cole who
Yeah.
forked our open source repo and began adding a whole bunch of functionality, like the ability to use different LLM providers, different functionality, da da da. And it's incredible because it's become kind of this test bed for people that are interested in AI and even the AI labs themselves
Yep.
for how to testing out different LLM providers and how good are these different models at running a real world application, because Bolt is like one of the only things that's out there that's open source.
Mhm.
It's just today, like we what we announced is Cole, we merged his fork back in upstream to StackBlitz, and there's like the official open source version of Bolt he and other folks are maintaining. And he's done an incredible job building a community just for the local open source version of this thing, right? And it's cool because I mean it's just like it allows everyone to innovate and just kind of contribute cool ideas. Again, like these other tools out there, you can't do that. Like you can't fork them. You can't say, hey, what would be cool if we could try da da da. Like with this, you
Yeah.
can. And yeah,
Fascinating. And what led you to, yeah, I guess go down the open source route? But like, I think I saw this on a Y Combinator article this morning. They were talking about like requests for startups, right? And there was a section talking about commercial open source. And that's essentially what you got here, right? Like, so what led you down that path to like open source it? And you still got a very viable business, right? That's making money. And I think a lot of
totally.
people don't know how to manage those two. So do you want to
Yeah.
talk about that a little?
But yeah, well, and I think of it, you did an incredible job in your article talking about this, of like kind of breaking down like, but when we kind of went like, hey, what it's like uncomfortable. Like we were like, open sourcing it feels like, maybe we're putting ourselves at risk or something. We were like, yeah, but we're gonna, I mean, people are gonna want to people, most people are gonna just want to pay a subscription for our thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't matter. Like what's gonna matter is like building an actual community of people that use our product where they're
Mm.
really successful. Like that's the only moat. Because like, if we think that whatever we wrote in the system prompt is like gonna prevent people from trying to build a copy of Bolt, it's like that's
Yeah,
it's like
you're gonna
obviously not the case. Like that,
and
it's just like that's the only moat we have. We're going to be cooked anyways.
exactly. Mm.
But yeah, so that's, and I think you did an incredible job in this blog post of like breaking down I think the kind of the logic of the decision. Because when people, I had investors hitting me up, like our own investors, like hitting me up going, hey, people are like using this open source thing. Is this okay? Like, should we be concerned or whatever? I'm like, no, it's totally fine. Like, I mean, I appreciate them being concerned about it. Like, this is did the math here, right? And like, this is going to be great. And because people are like, one thing too, that's been interesting is like, people, are like, man, like Bolt's so expensive and, for, the tokens and whatever.
Yep.
And what's kind of cool is like, we're the only people that can really say, I hear you, that this is just the price of inference today, actually. If you
Mm.
go and run this thing locally and put in your own API key, you'll see exactly how much it costs. And you'll see like
Mm.
basically the margin that we do not have,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
And so it's also been a trust building thing because I get it for like people that are trying these sorts of things out. And Bolt uses it needs a lot of context to work well. So it's going to be more expensive than like Copilot or, any of these other tools that are like $10 or $20 a month. So anyways, there's something community building wise, I think that's actually been pretty key as well.
Yeah.
Because, we say, hey, listen, you trust but verify us on this. You can go
Yeah.
run it local.
That's an interesting, and the context is the key, right? Because it's true, right? I mean, I found myself going through your plans like crazy, like super fast, and I know a lot of other guys too. And what's fascinating is like we'll complain about price increases for some other subscriptions, but you guys made it so that it made sense to increase because that context aspect, you guys were doing a way better job, in my opinion, right? Of the handling the errors and getting stuff to where I intuitively expect an AI system to get to today. And so that's where the value add is like, I know I'm paying more tokens, but you're also reducing the need for me to click fix every time there's a really stupid error, right? And
Totally.
how did that model come together for you guys essentially? And was that the plan when you brought Bolt in, right? Was that intentional or is it just was a very logical thing where, okay, well, we have more context, there's more tokens, and you just pay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, good. Yes, good question. We had no. I mean, when we launched, so StackButs' base plan was $9 a month since 2017, and we had never increased it.
Yeah,
And so when we launched, like you stacked, but Bolt was like $9. There was one plan; it was like $9 a month. And so on the first day, people were signing up. I mean, first days, like people were signing up and burning through all the tokens for $9, and they're
yeah,
like, "This is incredible! Like, how I want to keep using this. I'll pay you more money."
exactly.
And we're like, okay, all right. And then there's a flood of people coming in.
Yep.
And so I think it was like within 3 or 4 days, we had, we were like, okay, the base tier needs to be at $20 because $9 just doesn't get you enough inference to do anything meaningful.
Yes.
And then from there, we're like, well, let's add different tier plans. You can kind of like buy a certain amount of usage per month that kind of fits your use case you have. And then you can also buy tokens as needed additionally too on top of that. You're like either in between plans or if you hit the max plan and then you want to add more, you can do that. But yeah, that's kind of the idea. And we kind of stumbled into this whole thing. And like we're one of the first, I think we're the first company to actually prove out this model of having an AI tool that is, where people are paying like $200 a month in meaningful numbers for it because the value is just so clear, you know? Like for people that are developers, I mean, the ROI is nuts. I mean, there's a guy, on Twitter, his name's CJ, and he's like a website freelancer. And he posted this tweet where he was like, I spent $7 building this web app for my client, and I charged them $9,000 for it. Like $7 of Bolt tokens, right? And he sold the thing for 9 grand.
Insane.
Yeah, it's like if you search like Bolt arbitrage, you'll see like people that are starting to kind of connect the dots on this thing in Twitter or whatever. And it's like it's nuts. So I think people are like it's a kind of an interesting thing where, yeah, I think initially people are like this. Some people are like, yo, this is a lot of money. But people that are doing development, if you search Twitter for our bull arbitrage, you'll find people talking about it, I think. Yeah, there's one of the guys. But anyway, so yes, that's uh, that's just been kind of one of the interesting things. So people are willing to pay, willing to pay money for this because it's, because there's one example from that guy. It's a real arbitrage type ish. But yeah, anyway, so it's been very interesting.
Need to unmute myself. Yeah, no, absolutely love it. And I think this is the interesting part, right? It's that context, because I think the ones who are going to make these AI IDEs or these systems work better is having them understand just context better. And I think that is also the realm of culture, which is like my personal fascination area. Because it's like with culture, right? It's not just language. I know that a lot of these LLMs are doing a great job for translation, but still, even within a single language, there's all these different cultural contexts, right? That we are now expecting the AIs to just get, right? And I think what you guys have done is from the culture for a builder that's forming, you are understanding that context and embedding that into your platform. And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that like I've noticed and that I can appreciate, right? That what you guys have done. And that's why, yeah, we'll give you our money because you're doing it better than anyone else. Um, and I think so. It is going to be interesting, right? Say, for example, you know how fast this space is moving, right?
Yeah.
If others start becoming really good at this like similar context, what then is next for you guys, right? Like what are the things that you're foreseeing, or is it just going to be like you just have to keep catching up, making sure you're leaping ahead?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think there's a lot of cool stuff kind of popping up, right? Where I think
Yeah.
especially now, like because we've been very public with like the business numbers of this thing, and so as a result, there's been a lot of stuff, like a lot of people launching things to like be competitive with us, or just take just like be creative and kind of take what they can learn from what we've done and go build similar things. And I think for Stacklet specifically, the in-browser web container stuff is like a
Yeah.
huge advantage because like you
Yeah.
look at these other things that are coming out, they're primarily using virtual machines, which have a
Mm.
tangible cost and have very meaningful drawbacks where like a lot of these things won't even let you directly edit the code, right? And if they do, then the experience tends to be way worse because
Mm.
they're very unreliable. They can break in a lot of ways. I think those folks are dealing with a lot of different constraints, and you kind of like from what's known about the addressable market of where their revenues at or their communities or whatever. It's like you kind
Yeah.
of see lots of cool stuff, a lot of stuff hitting a hard ceiling though,
Yes.
where they just can't grow anymore because they're limited by the technical underpinnings of these things. But there's a lot of cool things that are happening where people are doing a lot of great integrations and da 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 da. And so I think
Mm.
on the Bolt side, our job is continue to making the best product ever and listening to folks that are using this and saying, hey, here's what we need and et cetera. And so I mean, like, I think it's great to have competition. I think like competition is like free R&D. So it's like when they prove something, it's like if they'd rather us be the first to the punch, but if we're going to be second, they're like, okay, well, we know it's de-risked. We know people want this, right? So that gives us the opportunity to look at it and go, how do we even get to more of the essence of it and do it even better? Right. You know what I mean? Like so I think for us, there's, we've got our own roadmap of stuff, but I think it's great. Same thing with the open source version of Bolt. There's stuff in there that is incredible. And we're like, so people are like, this is in the open source version, bring it to Bolt. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. Like that's amazing, right? Like the sky's the limit, So anyway, so like we've got our own kind of stuff cooking, just product features, R&D, da, da, da. And then there's stuff where, whether we are learning it from customers and building stuff, or there's stuff in open source or are there companies building things, it's like, it's all gravy. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
if we're just here to build the best products, for people that are our customers, our free tier users or whatever, it's, we have, if we don't do the best job in the world at that and help them be successful and have them be a part of our community, we're not going to win, right? But
Yeah.
we're not going to exist, and we're not going to be able to have the sort of impact and influence that we hope to have.
Yeah.
But but we're aware of that. I think
Yeah.
that's half the
Yeah,
battle.
100%. And I think, with the amount of competition that's out, it's fascinating to see because, even just a month ago, right? Like the sort of stack that everybody was using, like, Bolt might not have even been part of that. Because you guys, I remember it was like 2 months, was it 2 months ago or so, or
Yeah,
three?
2 months ago. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, a month or two before, right, Bolt wasn't even in the scene. And now,
Yep.
like for me personally, Bolt has replaced like V0 and Cursor,
Yep.
because even I was like on that bandwagon, just trying to see like why is this so popular? And I could see the limits even with those tools, right? So it's definitely fascinating to see. And I think, yeah, on the community front, that is where like that is an emerging moat, for you guys.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of opportunities, even just because of the name that you've used. You can turn that into identity. And you notice with the brands that are really sticky, it's like they've been able to turn what they do into more than just a product, right?
Totally.
As annoying as this is, like Salesforce, right? Product, you guys definitely have a better product, right? But their product isn't the best, but they still have a very strong community, right?
Did you read behind the cloud from Mark Benioff?
Nope. Is that a recent article or something? Or
No, yeah, yeah, book he wrote I think 2009 to 10 or something.
okay.
Oh, you'll love it. You'll love
All
it
right.
because
I'll give it.
he basically is like, here's how community is a moat for building. And he's this, co-founder, he's the founder CEO of Salesforce. That is how Salesforce built their business. I mean, it was focusing on community. It was all about their users and putting a spotlight on the users and the customers. And that is still true today. But you're dead
Mhm.
on. You're dead on. That is exactly, that's
Thank you,
exactly
man.
how they did, you know.
Yeah. I'll see if I remember interviewing, I think, the VP of community from Salesforce during that time, because they have their Trailblazer community, right? And yeah, this would have been a decade ago. Holy cow, I feel old. But yeah, I remember when I was talking to her, it was very interesting because, yeah, community wasn't necessarily a formal thing, right? But then they were
Yeah.
doing all these community aspects, build everything up. And then they were finally able to actually have like a formal, I guess, group and, VP of community and whatnot. Uh, but I noticed in the open source world, like community is just the norm, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, we
Totally.
know that. And so for you guys in the open source community, is that something you've been involved in as well in the past, like just open source stuff in general?
Yeah,
But yeah,
totally. And then we've been heavy in the open source world. Like I mentioned, V, like we've been the primary backer. We host like the conference for V and stuff, and
mm,
done this, and we spiritually understand this.
yeah,
Because I love it. I mean, I think it's like, it's an important part of how software is built, right? Is these things,
yeah,
and a lot of companies are now stepping up to the plate and better funding them and whatever have you. But
yeah.
yeah. By the way, I have to drop in like a minute to take a
My
call.
God, yes. And I lost track of time too, man. Okay. No, I
Yeah,
really
good.
appreciate it. Okay, so let me see if I can wrap it up with something because I had a whole bunch of questions which we've covered mostly all of them, which is great.
Hell
Okay.
yeah.
So I think, oh gosh, I wanted to talk about, I remember you mentioned something about the three most important thing for getting set up, auth, databases, and payments, right? And I think you guys, Superbase coming soon, right? The integration. The auth side, I know that's there. The payment side. So is there anything on the horizon to make payments integrations?
It's gonna be like built in, buttery smooth.
Yep, of
Yeah, 100%,
course.
100%. We want people to be able to build businesses on this thing,
Okay,
and
perfect, perfect.
so,
Okay, so and then last thing, when it comes to AI, do you think AI will become conscious or even have a soul in the future?
oh gosh.
You think they have a soul, right?
I think we'll see things that feel like they're conscious. Yeah, I think we'll see.
Mm.
And I think soul, man, that's a good question.
That might
I
have to
hope
be
so.
for another session. That
Yeah, I
topic.
hope so. I hope they do. I hope they do. I hope they do. I think it'd be very cool, you know. But yeah, I think it'd be a lot more cool and meaningful if they had a soul.
So
So
yeah,
um,
I'm with you on
yeah.
that. I'm with you. All right, my man. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated this. Hope we can do it again in the future. And yeah, of course, I'll be watching Bolt and really look forward to seeing the growth and to the success now and to many more successes in the future for you and the team.
Thanks for having me, man. It's been a blast.
Likewise, likewise. All right, have a great